Thank you for watching Aaron Ask America. Today I have a personal friend of mine. He's now an author and he's here to talk about his book. His name is G.M. James. We call him Matt, and I can't wait to talk to him about the book and about how we met, all this sort of stuff, and we're going to talk about it right now. So, Matt, how's it going?
It's going fantastic. Thanks for having me on, and I'm excited to talk about my book and then talk about kind of whatever else you want to ask me while I'm here.
Yeah. So, whenever you told me that, so at the same time that you were writing this book, we had talked about, I had been getting this image in my head of what Aaron Ask America is, and I knew that once I started it, I was going to have people that I know at the very beginning just to kind of get a comfortable vibe, to kind of see how this thing is actually going to turn out. So when you're like, hey, I think the way that you said it to me is, hey, I'm releasing a book, you need to buy it. I think that's the way that you said it to me.
That's what you tell all your friends,
yeah,
the family. You're like, I'm releasing a book, you need to buy it. If you don't buy it, nobody else will.
Right, exactly. And that's the same thing with the podcast. It's like, hey, Facebook friends, we got a podcast coming out. That's why do you think I had, like, the first person on podcast was my wife. So, like, of course I'm going to have her on there, right? Because it's the closest sphere that I got. So when you told me that you were, releasing a book, I'm like, we're going to get you on here as quick as possible because, let's say for whatever reason this thing goes viral, whether it's through the sale of your book or through someone watching this and then telling their friends about it and they start buying your book and then both of them blow up. I think that'd be awesome, right? So you get this humble beginnings of streaming, or not streaming, but recording this podcast in like the computer room of my house, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it's fantastic, and having a podcast like this to come on to, starting out with friends or family, it's very important because it gives you that comfortability before you start getting to the hard conversations, because these are normally easy, right?
Yeah.
You can ask questions, we know kind of what to talk about, but dealing with the bigger, more broader stuff, that can lead to different kinds of conversations. And if you're not comfortable with the average, it's going to be hard to be comfortable with the big ones. So.
I totally agree with you because, like, my overall goal, right? I don't know if I told you, like, my vision of this entire podcast is to, like, put it out there, like, on Nextdoor or some other place like that can around the city and have people come over here and talk to them, like, about the backgrounds. I don't care what religion they are, what background or anything like that. It's like the whole point of Aaron Ask America is Aaron Ask America, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't agree with me on this, who cares? Let's have a conversation. It doesn't even have to be about that one thing that we disagree on, because here's what we all have in common, right? We all grew up to a degree in America. We all have something weird about our families and everything like that. And we'll get into that later because, like, the whole thing is like America is like this melding pot, and like your family did something different than my family growing up, but like, what do we have in common? Like, what do we do? Like, I'm over here in East Texas, and I'm not exactly sure where you grew up at, but like wherever you grew up at, like, what were y'all doing? Like my dad was, I told a story last podcast about whoever drops five, right? Like, that's a game that we came up with because we didn't have any money, so that's what we did, right? So
yeah, and it's important too because you'd be surprised how much similarities people have, and if you discount somebody just because they believe something differently, or they vote somewhere differently, or they live somewhere differently, you kind of miss out on some really, really unique conversations. And we'll get into this later, but that's one of the values that I got out of the military was talking to all kinds of people from all kinds of different backgrounds, from all kinds of different ethnicities, and just being able to have a conversation and figure out what we have similar is really, really cool.
And that's the whole point of it, because like all of us grew up at a certain point, right? It meant whether it was the 80s, the 90s, the 2000s, there was all kinds of backgrounds, like you're saying. And one of the things I've learned on and from Fire Resistant is like everything generally, like the things that I thought that I did as a quirk, I found out that other people did. And it's just like, okay, well then maybe the things that I was doing wasn't original. It was just somehow like, it was like this collective of people that had the same idea that did the same things. That's what is weird, right?
Oh yeah, so, it's definitely weird.
Starting off, let me ask you, because we have to tell the people how we met. Okay, I haven't really spoken on this specific platform yet because this is only episode 2, but I do a show on Twitch, right? And that's how you and I met. I'm not exactly sure if I've ever asked you, like, how did you come across Fire Resistant?
So I normally do a charity, I guess is the best way of putting it. And I go on Twitch and find random Christian style themed Twitch channels that don't have a lot of people watching them, and I kind of go in there, figure out what they're talking about, see if I can donate some subs or donate some bits. And your channel was one of the ones I just came across one night when I was looking, and then once we started talking, I think it found out we live really really close.
Yeah.
And then it's just a really cool podcast style Twitch show. You know, being able to goof off and have fun, but also preach the gospel, pray for people, and be able to just kind of be a shining light. I mean, I think we can agree that there's a lot of darkness in the world, and especially in online streaming, Twitch, podcasts, different things like that. And being able to be a small light in that darkness is very, very good. And so the people that was on your channel talking and tapping, and you and Fred talking back and forth and stuff, it was just a really cool I felt like I was there in the room with y'all. So
Yeah, so I don't know if I've ever told you this story, and I'll be quick about it, but the very first time that we met in person was at, was it Hothbrow? Hothbrow, we met there. So, like, you know, when you meet someone and for the first time, you know, when you're on the internet, you really don't know who each other were, but like Fred and I, we had like this, like I carry, right? But I normally don't carry out, right? Usually carry to church because of whatever reasons, but like Fred was like, we don't know this guy. So we had like this this semi plan just in case something weird happened.
The safe word.
Yeah. Well, because like the way that we sat, it was positioned perfectly. So if something weird happens, but of course nothing did, and we become friends and all that. But you know, when you meet somebody on the internet for the very first time, it's definitely interesting because you don't know who the person is. Because I don't think we talked on the phone. I think it was all through the show. And then we were like, let's meet up at Hothbrow because, you know, it was a middle point between where we live and where you live. And we just had a good time. I remember meeting you there. And then when we walked out, we were just like, he's a normal guy because, you know, there have been some people, as small of a show as we are, where there's been some weirdness that happened, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I just think that meeting you has blessed my family for sure because we've met up several times for game nights and Top Golf and all that sort of stuff. So
yes, definitely, and it was definitely a blessing meeting y'all. And you know, I had the same worry in my head was, you know, are these going to be overly religious people that are going to start, you know, speaking in tongues and praying over me in the middle of a restaurant, or, you know, are y'all crazy? Are y'all actually showing up? So it's really unique experiment. If you think about it, especially like in today's America. Like if you think about the 80s and 90s, you could probably go and meet somebody and be perfectly fine. But now with as much, you know, you think about technology, different types of media, books, movies, TV shows, all these thoughts are entering your head that aren't really yours. And so a lot of these people that meet up and they're crazy or whatever, it's because they have this preconceived notion inside their head that they have to come into something aggressive or weird or distorted, you know, to make sure, you know, they don't come across a specific way. So
yeah. And should we address the weirdest date of all time?
Go ahead.
I think we have to because it's part of the history of our friendship and our two families. So I'm not going to name names, but like my son, I'm not going to say his name, and your daughter, I'm not going to say her name. They decided to date. And I think from what I remember of that whole experience was I think they just texted each other, and then you were going to the Micro Center, and you're like, hey, let me stop by. I'm heading down y'all's way so they can actually see each other, because I think there had been like they don't see each other. They only met one time, right? Yeah. And so like, let's get them together. And then so like I mean, to me, it's still one of the funniest stories, but like, I would love for you've told it to me, but you haven't told it to anybody else. But like Dexter leaves we meet up at the comic book shop, and then like Dexter, Dad, do high five, go have fun. He gets in your car, and then
Lord of the Rings happens without no words. Just watching two people walk and drive. It was 6 hours of complete silence
Yeah.
between them.
I sit back and I think about that, but like, I'm thinking like, did Dexter go 6 hours without like saying a word?
Oh no, he spoke
Yeah.
to me. Me and him had full conversations, but not to her.
Yeah. So like, did you ask a question that involved her, but maybe she just answered you,
I'm,
but
I'm
then like not answered him or not included them?
I'm relatively certain that I said the following words at least a few times. Y'all should probably talk to one another. Yes.
Right. So, I know that my boy's over there and he's doing a job for us, and I appreciate him, and I very much dislike bringing it up, but I mean, it is part of the
Oh no, it definitely
it's part of the history of our friendship, is this moment where they dated, they saw each other one time, and then after they didn't talk, I guess they broke up or whatever, but
Yeah, it's a little bit later.
yeah, but it was just but I think during the whole time that they dated, they saw each other like 3 times.
Yeah,
maybe
I think
maybe
about
that
3 times.
So, but just like me envisioning, because you want the audience to envision like him getting in your truck, and the truck's got three.
Yeah, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people in there.
Right.
He's the seventh. I positioned him right in the middle seat so that way I could watch him.
Yeah.
And then also he was sitting next to Riley, and they still didn't.
Yeah.
Nothing. No talking.
Y'all go out to lunch. Do you remember where y'all went?
We went to Micro Center, then we went up to Denton and met the grandparents for Torchy's Tacos.
Torchy's Tacos. They sit in a booth. Y'all sit in a booth, table,
Booth table. It was a booth, half table.
and they're sitting across from each other,
Next to each other.
They're sitting next to each other, not saying a word. Okay.
And then we get in the car, drive all the way back to your house with no talking, and then Dexter just hops out, says bye to me, and that's it.
The next book that you write should absolutely be about the longest, worst date of all time.
I'm telling you, to me, I think about watching Lord of the Rings. Okay, you take out all the action scenes, you take out all the words, and all you're doing is watching Frodo and Samwise just walk.
Yeah.
That's how the date went.
Yeah. That, to me, like, that's just an amazing story. I know that I wanted to get it out there so that way people could hear this crazy story about, again, but like when we were that age, put in that position, something like that, probably same thing, similar to that. It's not like I'm running around saying I'm the macho alpha guy that had it all together whenever I was, trying to date a girl or something like that. So I'm not trying to say I'm any different than he would have been in that position.
I was definitely the awkward one also.
Yeah,
Quiet, passive, no talking.
So let's move on from that. So that way we can we show them that how we met and just this weirdness as far as like this one day of dating or whatever you want to call it, and to the point where we are now, where you've come here and you're like, hey, I would like to be on the show. And I'm like, yeah, of course. That's the whole plan, was have you on here. You've written this book called Dear Me, I Found You. And, basically the very first question, of course, when you think of movies, you think of songs, you think of books, you think of all this artistic stuff that's out there. Like, what inspires people to write this book or movie or anything like that? But like, what actually inspired you to write the book?
Well, so for me, everybody goes through a journey in their life. I always use this phrase that everybody hits a rock bottom. It just depends on how deep that rock bottom is for some people. For some people, it's going to be very deep. It might be drugs. It might be suicide. It might be depression. For other people, it could just be, financial crisis or a broken marriage or something like that.
Yeah.
But for me, going through my life and journey, I've had a lot of ups and downs, and a lot more downs than normal. And so back in 2009, when I was in Iraq, deployed, I started kind of scribbling out my thoughts back then. And then once I got back, I put it to the side and haven't really touched it since then. But a couple years ago, I started kind of writing different things as I went along throughout the days. But the inspiration came from how would I guide my kids through a turmoilous time, right? How would I do that? Would I just look at them in the eyes and be like, "Hey, it'll be okay"? Would I look at them and say, "Hey, pick up your bootstraps and go to the next problem. You'll be fine"?
Yeah.
I thought that it's very similar to kind of how you tell your kids about college. You could tell them college is great all day long, but if you never did it yourself, then you don't have experience to back that up. All you have is knowledge. And so this book was written from that experience side. How can my experiences help somebody else out? If I'm talking to my kids and I'm talking to them about suicide, for instance, and I say, I suffered from this and I know how I came out from it, that speaks a lot more than just suicide is bad because
Right.
it's bad, right? So the inspiration came from how can I use my experiences to help other people, and then I just put it into words, and I decided to write it in a specific way. So all these letters that this book is, and we'll kind of dive into how the book is structured, but these letters are actually my letters, and the narrative is told from a different perspective because I didn't think it would be beneficial to say my perspective because I didn't want it to be a memoir or a bibliography. I want it to be a character that they can relate to, but using the real story of me behind it,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
It does. And you had mentioned your time in Iraq and and some of the letters that were probably influenced by that. But since you've gotten back over here, I know that you have been working with fellow soldiers that are now back over here. You're helping them cope with being back over here and not over there. So, I mean, like, how much did that actually influence the book as well?
Well, so yeah, in the past, there's been some volunteer opportunities to help out disabled veterans and people suffering from PTSD. Mostly, a lot of that, I don't want to say it's not important, but it didn't flow into a lot of the inspiration from this. But there are some components in this book that relate to that. So I would say it was minimal inspiration from that, but the purpose behind the book is to help anybody who feels broken or lost or has struggling identity, not specifically towards military or towards civilians or whatever.
That makes sense. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be in the military. This is basically for everybody. Like if you need help, read this book because this is going to help you get through things, right?
Yeah. So this book dives deep into who you identify as, like what are your struggles, what are your pains, and using those struggles and pains to understand how it could impact someone's life or how it did impact somebody's life, my life. And then as the book progresses, it shifts into more of a redemption kind of area. So how to pull through those pain points and those low points and get to a point where you can start to find healing and start to find that redemption, because grace is there and grace is needed.
It's important. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, when you think of like J.R.R. Martin and Tolkien and C.S. Lewis, they all have like these writing styles, and the way that your book is written, it's written in a way of like letters. So, when somebody purchases this book, it's not gonna look like a traditional like C.S. Lewis book.
No.
It's gonna be written as letters.
It's a very unique book.
Why did you choose to write it that way?
So, whenever I'm watching a movie, I'll use Star Wars, for instance. Star Wars, I'm able to connect to that show because as the movie starts, it does the little scroll projection, right?
Yeah.
It gives you the backstory, gives you kind of what's going on, and then it dives into the storyline and the plot, and the movie progresses. I wanted to write a book like this in a way where when you read the letter in each chapter, you kind of already start to get that feeling of I'm going to connect to this or I'm not going to connect to this, or I understand kind of what this chapter is going to dive into, and it should give you that push of saying, hey, I want to read this chapter now that I read this letter. The reason why I structured it this way is because, again, when you read these letters, it's written from a real perspective, and you're able to connect to that. And then when you start to read down through the narrative of each chapter, the fictional perspective from Micah, who's the main character in the story, he's able to tell a story based on his life that connects to the main subject. So it kind of sets the stage of each book, and that's why it's kind of unique. Most books don't really have this kind of setup where it's truth mixed in with a fictional perspective, if that makes sense.
And did the name Micah, did you pick that from anywhere
Well,
specific?
I wanted to use my name, but then I was like, I'm not going to use my name. So I just decided, let's go with something very similar. So I went with Micah.
Oh,
It just
okay.
kind of popped in my head.
You're just like, yeah, let's write down. Oh, it's Micah. There it is right there. So, based off of just a little bit you've talked about as far as like who this book is for, you're stating that the way that you wrote it, you weren't writing with one specific like creed, one specific person, one specific background. Like, so basically roundabout way of asking, like, who do you envision this book is for?
Well, ideally, I mean, this book is for everybody, if I'm being honest. But there's portions of this book that are for people who are hurting. There's portions of this book for people who have felt pain from others. There's portions of this book for people who have struggled with who they are. Like, why am I the way I am? Why am I struggling with my faith? Why am I struggling with suicide? Why am I struggling with depression? People who feel lonely and alone. People who just want to read something that gives them hope. I think that, being a person who has been in a deep, dark dungeon for most of his life, one of the things that is always sold out at the store is hope.
Yeah.
And hope is a very, very hard thing to find. We get it from our parents, our siblings, our friends, our family, but
Superman.
Superman, our Batman.
Well, not so much Batman, but
But it's a very rare commodity in today's world, especially in today's world where, if I was a teenager right now and I went out to a random teacher and said, hey, I'm struggling with depression, what are they going to say to me? You need to go see a shrink. You need to go to a psychologist, go get some pills, go talk to somebody else. Nobody stops to help the little things anymore. They only want to stop and help the big things that gives them fame. This book wants to engage you on those little things that are pestering you, that are struggling, that you're struggling to overcome. The anxiety, depression, loneliness, feeling alone, identity, grace. It's all in there.
yeah. So you had mentioned hope earlier, and we kind of you kind of listed the things of what people are going out there and looking for hope, right? We have an answer, right? And that's, we believe that it's through the love of Jesus Christ and the resurrection, all that sort of, and all of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when it comes to the book, like, you have your hope, right? But then, like, what else are you wanting the reader to gather from this? There's hope, there's encouragement, but like, is there something in there that, like, when a reader reads it, you're hoping like, hey, I hope that when they read this, if they're struggling with this, that here's like a nugget specifically for them. So when somebody reads the book, like, what are you hoping that they get out of it?
Well, so the book accumulates in a couple of chapters around grace and finding grace. And so my hope with somebody reading this book is that they go through these chapters, they connect to what Micah's going through, to what the letters say, and then they get to these last couple of chapters and they realize this is how he did it. This is how Micah found healing and hope, and it was through the grace and the blood and through Jesus. And it doesn't come out and overly say it, but it's there. And that's my hope for people who are reading this, is that whenever you're looking down at your problems all the time, it's hard to look up and find that there's already somebody who died for all that.
Right.
And that grace can outweigh the negative in everybody's life.
Yeah. I mean, and like we were talking about earlier, like, everybody needs like hope. And you had mentioned earlier about how like part of your story, part of who you are and where you've been has influenced the book, but like how much of your life has actually influenced the book?
I would say all of it. It starts with adoption at a very young age, and it pursues all the way up to maybe about a year ago. So it encapsulates almost every aspect.
Yeah. Yeah.
When people read this, this is my heart in a book. It's not just written to sell. It's written as a testimony. But the way I tell testimonies and the way I tell stories is through the lens of someone else.
Yeah.
I use stories to do that. I'm not, even in this interview, I'm not really one person to just come out and say, hey, this is what I'm struggling with. I say, hey, this is kind of, if you think about Star Wars, this is kind of what I'm struggling with, the dark and the light side. That's how I tell, and that's why I decided to write the book in this way, is because I connect to a character who's progressing through issues. I don't connect to somebody just writing out their story and hoping that I understand what they're saying.
Yeah, and it's perfect. You said that perfectly, because when you look at the way that that Luke Skywalker was written, right, he got his butt kicked
Yes.
from A New Hope all the way to the end, right, to the very end of Empire Strikes Back, or not Empire, Return of the Jedi, right. The only reason that he won was because Vader interfered, right, and turned back. So. And then you look at Rey, like Rey's character was written not like that. So like us, it wasn't that she was female, it was the fact that like this character was written to win from the point that we see her all the way to the very end. So like there's no pull to that. There's no hope to see them go beyond of what the character is. And I think that's important to what you're saying with the book. And when you're when you're writing this book, right, and you said it has your whole story has influenced this book from the first letter to the last letter. Like when you go through the stuff that you're going through and you're recounting it in your head, like what is the hardest part of writing this book, because you are taking yourself from point A all the way till just now, right? So how do you how hard is that? Like what's the hardest part of that?
Well, so what's really cool about the way God uses things is that he uses anything and everything he can to help you. I'm a firm believer in that. And one of the things that helped me was actually writing this out, because I realized that as I progressed throughout this book, that there were still some things that I was salty about. There were still some things that I was hurting and that I haven't even healed.
Yeah.
So even through writing this book, God was able to heal me with certain things, which I think is really cool. I'm writing this book to help other people, but God's using it to help me at the same time. So going through this book, there's a couple of points where, especially over the past couple of years, that there's things that I just push down into the bottle. And
we all do. We're men. We're supposed to.
And through writing this book, I was able to heal through a couple of those things.
Yeah, art is healing, right? Sometimes watching, like the hero go through the trial to see him come out on the other side, or recounting some events that happen in your life will help you heal. And it sounds like that's what is. And, as you wrote it, I'm sure there was probably like some psychologist probably has some, or psychiatrist probably has some fancy word for when you write it. It's therapy, right?
Well, even through, I read a couple of chapters, a few chapters to people, and even just reading it, like I was still connecting to my own story so much that I was in tears or I was crying, because I was like, I'm not healed from this yet.
Yeah.
And that's why I decided over the last couple months to include a final chapter, which is to the letters I still have to write. Mm-hmm. And I put in there little thoughts about, if I was to write a letter about this, what would that look like?
Yeah. So, I can totally agree with you, because when you're reading these letters that you've already written, I'm sure there's probably some emotion as you were writing them too. Mm-hmm. So reading it aloud puts you right back into the scenario of what the origin of that letter is.
Yeah,
so
definitely. It's like reliving it's like, again, watching a movie and then watching Avengers Endgame and saying, I really want to watch this over again. So you rewind it and you start it over again. I could watch that final scene in that movie with Iron Man probably 100 times and probably tear up every time, because it's still a wound, for me, because I love the character. And there's a lot in this book that I didn't want to deal with at the time. And even today, there's still stuff in this book that I probably haven't healed from.
Yeah. And it's one of those things that, as much as we would like to be healed from certain things, we may never see that until we get up to glory, till we graduate, right? So But yeah, so I totally understand recounting things because there's a couple of things that happen. I don't even want to compare the minute things that I've gone through in my life to the stuff you've gone through. But a couple of years ago, we went through something as a family, right? And even thinking about it, or even potentially talking about it, it's just all that emotion comes back up because when you see the family stressed out over something so dumb, you're taken back to that moment. You're in the room with that person who's yelling, and you're just like, what in the world is going on? Like, I wasn't even thinking about the way that it was being interpreted or something like that. So
Well, that's why I use a term in my book over and over and over again. It's called becoming, right? A lot of people don't realize this is that you can't go to Walmart and buy healing for $1.99, in the discount area.
there's alcohol section. I'm just kidding.
Healing is a process, and even though you might be fully healed from something and still struggle with it because we're human, and that's what we're flawed. You could put all of it in Jesus, and then you could still go back to that original story later on because wounds are wounds for a reason.
Right.
Yes, Jesus will save you from everything, and he will redeem you from everything, and that grace will help you heal. But if you still focus on that and you don't give it 100% over, which is what humans struggle to do, is given over control completely.
Yeah.
And when we don't do that, that's when those old wounds can eventually open back up, and then that stuff pours back out.
Well, what did I tell you right before we started streaming? Ben Affleck's Batman from the Flash movie. He tells Barry, "It's the scars that define us." That is what it is. That is,
Yes.
those are words to live by. Ben Affleck's Batman. Those are the words to live by. I don't know if you know that or not, but there's the Bible, and then there's Affleck from
Batman.
from the Flash. But speaking of that, I want to make sure that we cover the book and as much as we possibly can. But then you had mentioned earlier that you were looking at, you said, being influenced by the next, 1, 2, maybe 3, all of your projects may be influenced by this one book. And so that kind of leads me, like, you have this book out. We want people to go to Amazon. There'll be a link in the description to go. People click, go buy it, go, purchase it, buy one for your friend, all that sort of stuff. Buy as many as you can, and then give them out if you need to. But like this book's out. We're pushing this book, but like, what's the future for GM Janes?
Well, I do have a couple of ideas out there of what I want my next story to be. I kind of know what I want it to be. It's just having the time to sit down and write it out. But the next series, if you will, because I want to write essentially a 3 to 5 book series, is going to be around memory manipulation and why memories define you, and they're not necessarily a bad thing. Like even the painful memories, even the worst memories. If you go back and you think about the worst day of your life, that still somehow shaped something that you are today. And if without that, you wouldn't be where you are.
Yeah.
So I, using this book and writing it and thinking about all the stuff in my life that was painful, that kind of inspired me. Well, what if I could erase that? What would that look like?
You'd be a totally different person.
Exactly. So why don't we write a book that goes over about erasing your memory, modifying your memory, only erasing the painful stuff and only leaving the good stuff? Like, how would that shape you if we had the technology and the ability to do that? And so that's kind of what's next for me.
Yeah. So you said it's going to be a potentially 3 to 5 book series.
Yes.
Depends on how like crazy you get. You're going to be writing. You're like, is it going to be like George R. Martin, where you release a book, get everybody hooked, and then wait 10 years to release a sequel, and then just get sold to HBO, finish the story, but not finish the book? So like, is that the goal?
No. So if you think about my earlier comment, the New Age America, right, that we're in right now, the binge America, right? I would be completely flustered if I did that, because it would make me mad.
Oh yeah.
So it would be one of those things where if I sat down and wrote the first book, I would have it done in probably 2 or 3 months, and then write the second book in 2 or 3 months. So probably I would break.
Release, it is time for you to go to bed. Dexter,
Oops.
go to your room until 9 p.m., then go to bed.
All right, that was my Alexa popping off. Tell my daughter to go to bed.
Well,
So,
we'll have to edit that
we'll
out.
have to, it'll just be, it'll go from.
But no,
forgot
that's
about Alexa telling my daughter to go to bed.
that's the future. That's kind of what the future holds.
Yeah. So when we are not when we first met, but throughout our time being friends on the Fire Resistant, your name has been Captain America. And I'm not going to
Yes.
tell anybody how it's spelled, but it's Captain America. So like out of all the superheroes in the mythos, from DC to Marvel to Dark Horse to Independent, like out of all of those, why Captain America? Why Steve Rogers?
Well, he is the best Avenger. I mean, if we're just being honest, he has the heart of gold. He has the ability to be a leader and convince people to fight for him. I mean, if you think about Marvel without Captain America, you're thinking about a bunch of heroes not being unified. You know, he's the one in most of the comics that unify the heroes together. And so, also, being able to throw around a shield is pretty cool as well.
Have you ever dove into the mythos of him throwing that shield?
No.
So, this is all on TikTok or whatever, but them talking about how the super soldier serum, like it enhanced his brain. So when he goes to throw the shield, his brain has already mapped out the math, the force, and everything. So when he throws it, his brain has already calculated that it's going to bounce here, 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 and come back to him. That's why the shield always comes back to him, is because his brain has already calculated the force, the velocity, and the
Well,
angle.
that's just another reason why he's awesome. I mean, he knows geometry.
Yeah. Okay. So, who's better? Who should have been the Captain America character in the MCU once old Steve Rogers left? Should it have been Bucky or should it have been Sam? Controversial.
So, I think that the character of Sam Wilson Falcon should have been in the MCU Captain America. The issue I have is that I don't think Anthony Mackie has that charisma that he needs to play the character well. And Sebastian Stan, who plays the Winter Soldier, he also doesn't have that charisma.
You don't think so?
No, Chris.
I think both of them have.
Chris Evans has a certain charisma when he's talking and acting that's just completely different from anybody else. So does Robert Downey Jr. If you think about it, like he just owns that character, and Chris Evans owns that Captain America character. But I think they made the right decision there. I think Anthony Mackie does a really good job playing Captain America. Maybe not so much in the Falcons TV series, but the Captain America Brave New World, where he actually was Captain America for the whole project. I think he does pretty well. He brings a little bit more of a serious tone to it, and but I still think they made the right decision. I mean, if you think about it, you can't have, the Winter Soldier in the MCU. He killed Tony Stark's parents. He blew up things. He set off bombs. He killed a whole bunch of people. No, he can't do it. But what's also really funny about this, right? So
They just redeemed him in the Thunder.
I know, but what's really funny about this is that after Captain America gave the shield to Falcon in Endgame, there was a bunch of people online complaining. Well, they can't give it to the Winter Soldier because he's this terrorist and stuff inside the MCU. And then the very next movie, the Winter Soldier's a senator.
Yeah.
So they're like, he's not good enough to get the shield, but he's good enough for Congress.
They can be in Congress. Yeah. I thought that. I was just about to tell you. I was just about to say that like his arc was, he went from being a killer for was it the Russian? No, yeah, it was a Russians.
Russians,
it was the Russians, and or was it the Germans? I don't remember. Yeah,
No, it was Russian.
It was Russians. He goes from the killers for Russians to being freed, to being framed, to now being a senator, right? So he can run around the show, because like my whole thing with giving Sam the shield without powers, that's just the thing. It's like him throwing the shield knowing that he doesn't have any powers is kind of dumb
Yeah.
for me. So it takes the believability out of it. I really like, what's his name? Who's the guy that plays Sam? Anthony Mackie.
Anthony Mackie.
I really like Anthony Mackie.
Yeah.
I disagree with you. I think he's got a ton of charisma. And I think that
Well-
Bucky has a ton of charisma. But I'm just saying that, like, but I just didn't think that his character was right for the
Yeah,
right for the
I'm
role.
not saying he doesn't. I'm just saying the way he plays Falcon, like the way he plays Falcon is completely different than the way he plays Captain America. Like in the MCU. If you think about the way he acts and stuff, it's like he had a character shift to make him more serious for Captain America.
It should have been. It's Cap.
Yeah, but I do agree. I think I think it's cool in a way that he's being Captain America without the powers. But I do think I personally think either in this next Avengers movie or something he's going to be like, I can't do this without the powers. I'm going to have to take the serum. So
No, so you think he's going to become
Yeah.
a super soldier?
I think he is. Yeah.
Interesting. That'll be a wild thing to see as if he does do that, or because we know that Chris Evans coming back.
Yeah, but he might not be coming back in the same role.
Right. Well, I'm just saying that he is coming back. I'm not saying he come back. Well, I think what Chris Evans before Cap wasn't really that popular of an actor.
No,
right?
he wasn't.
It's one of those moments where the character is what made him the money, not so much him. He came in there and I was really mad when they cast him as Captain America.
Well, especially after his performance in Fantastic Four.
Exactly.
Wasn't that good?
And I was like, what are they doing? And then when I saw, like, I'm the first to say that I ate crow for two comic book movies. One was Captain America, because when I saw that movie, I was like, he is Captain America. He took the role seriously.
Well, same
It
thing
was
with Robert Downey
phenomenal.
Jr.
Well, the other one was Heath Ledger as a Joker.
Yeah.
I was like, he had just come off Brokeback Mountain. He was the guy from A Knight's Tale. And I was like, what are they doing? And
This guy can't be the Joker.
yeah, and then the very first image that they release is like this black and white photo, and like they have his hair kind of pushed back, so all you see is his face, right? We don't know the context of the scars, anything like that. We're like, what the heck are they doing? And as you know, Batman's my guy, so Joker's my second guy.
I mean, if we're being honest, Iron Man's better than Batman, but we won't get into that debate.
Take away all their gadgets. Who wins?
Iron Man.
What?
He has more money.
I said take away the gadgets and have them fight to the death.
Well, Iron Man could just hire somebody to beat Batman.
That's not what I said. That's not part of the. That's not part of the question here. Batman would absolutely destroy him if you took away the iron suit, and even if he had the iron suit, Batman could probably take him out.
Okay.
But ultimately, that Chris Evans was a character that I definitely ate crow on, just because I walked in and I was like, I'm watching this purely because it's a Marvel movie, and I came out, I was totally delighted by it.
Well, everybody felt the same way with Guardians of the Galaxy as well.
Me too.
Like, I saw that trailer, I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And then I went to see the movie, and I was like, this is the best thing I've ever seen.
For me, I knew zero about Guardians of the Galaxy. I had no idea who they were at all. So when I went and saw Guardians of the Galaxy, I was going to see it because I didn't know who Chris
Pratt.
Chris Pratt. I didn't really know him because I didn't watch Parks and Recs until a couple years ago. Gamora, I think I knew her from Avatar.
Yeah.
And then like Rocket, everybody knows. I forget the actor who plays Rocket.
Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, Bradley Cooper. Everybody knows him, but it's CGI, so it's not actually him.
Yeah.
We all know Vin Diesel.
Who's that? Who's Vin Diesel?
Vin Diesel is. Groot.
I'm just kidding. Everybody knows Vin Diesel.
I am Groot. If he ever gets tired of it, I am Groot. I can do that all day long. I can even sound sad. I am Groot. But yeah, I feel the same way about the Guardians movies too, because like they went from me being like, what are they doing, to okay, they know what they're doing. And then Guardians 2, some people didn't like Guardians 2. I love Guardians 2. And even 3, like I really enjoyed all 3 movies. They told a perfectly good story.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, Guardians 3 did have a problem with the villain. I forget, High Evolutionary, I think his name was.
Mm-hmm.
Like I thought
He was good until he went crazy, and then the whole yelling and screaming thing got on my nerves.
Yeah, there was that. He was this guy who was looking for the next evolution in species, and he had lived this life and did all these things, and he was acting fine, and he was great until the script didn't need him to be great.
Yeah.
And then he fell off.
Yeah.
And I was like, what in the world? Like,
No, they could have done a lot more with his character, and if we're being honest, I mean, having everybody survive at the end kind of, I think, ruined the arc. I think some people needed to go in that movie. I think it would just brought it to a good conclusion and naturally converted it over to a new Guardians team.
Which they did.
Well, they did in a way, but they still say, Star-Lord will return.
Well, I mean, Chris Pratt wants to make
All
a
that
paycheck.
stuff.
I mean,
Yeah.
playing Star-Lord. Dude, if you got cast as Captain America tomorrow, how long would you play him for?
Ever.
Till you die.
I would
you
be
would
ever.
you would go back and replace old Steve
I
Rogers.
would use the Infinity Stones to go back in time.
You would play Steve Rogers all the way, and that's just Chris Pratt. Like, I think if anybody should have ate it, it should have been like Drax or a Nebula. Like those two characters could have been.
Yeah, definitely.
Could have been destroyed, and nobody would have batted an eye. But I think that the actress who plays Nebula is probably not so much caring. Karen Gillian. Like, I mean, nobody would have cared.
Yeah.
But yeah. So DC, we had talked about
Terrible.
Superman prior to this podcast.
Yes.
So Superman, James Gunn. We were just talking about Guardians. We were doubting him for Guardians, and there's been a lot of kind of doubt for him with Superman. And then now we get full trailer number 1, and we were kind of chatting about this a little bit before, and we're like, hey, yeah, this looks good.
Yeah, I think it looks good. But like I said before, I think the only thing that concerns me is how they're going to do the story.
Yeah.
Is it going to be a situation where we have, a 14 character kind of story with not enough development in the main character? Or is it going to be a series of flashbacks? How they're going to do this. I think James Gunn could tell a story. We know he could tell a story.
Right.
I think the visuals look fantastic. I think Superman's acting, his charisma, the character he is, I think that all looks great. Is this a movie that's going to reboot the franchise, or is this just a Superman movie? How are they going to develop a plot that extends beyond it? How are they going to combine all the characters together to make a cohesive story? That's my biggest concern is just at the end of the movie, am I going to sit there and say, wow, that was a really good movie and it had a really good story and plot? Or am I just going to say, oh, wow, that was just really good graphics and really cool portrayal of Superman?
Yeah.
Which one is it going to be? I think Man of Steel, had a really great story behind it. I think the graphics, I think that worked very well as a Superman movie, with the exception of a minor kind of components on it. But that was because it had just Superman and his villain, and that was it.
Right.
This movie's not just going to have Superman and a villain. It's got to have Superman, additional heroes, additional villains. How's it all going to flow together in a 2.5 hour long movie?
Yeah.
That's my concern.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I just think what will end up happening is there's going to be a cohesive Superman story where superheroes show up when they need to.
Yeah.
Now, the problem that I'm going to have, because I'm a Batman guy, we know that Batman's in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
So when Kaiju shows up, if Superman already knows Batman, then why doesn't Batman show up?
Well, the question is which Batman are they going to use? Did they say Robert Pattinson's Batman's going to be the one?
No.
So if that's not the case, they might do a little cameo maybe at the end of the movie. That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So I didn't watch it because it was too over the top for me. But there was a cartoon series called Creature Commandos.
Mm-hmm.
In one of the episodes, Batman's in the background. So so there's like a bolt of lightning where you see his suit, and it is not. And Creature Commandos is in the world that James Gunn built. It's the first piece of art that is in this DC EU or whatever it's called, DCU. And when the lightning flash, you get a real quick shot of him in his cape and cowl. Granted, it's animated, so and it's not Robert Pattinson. There, he said that it wasn't going to be.
Well, that's good. I think they need to reboot it as well, or maybe bring back Ben Affleck.
That would be so good. That'd be so.
I really
good.
think he. So
He's too old at this
I think
point.
Christian Bale had the best Batman story. Like, I think the three movie arc was really, really good. But for some reason, out of all the Batmans, Ben Affleck had the best Batman persona.
Yeah.
Like the way he talked, the way he looked, the suit, the fighting style. I thought it was really, really good. And I'm sad that that might not, or that probably won't be the forever Batman.
Yeah. So for me, because Batman's my guy, like Christian Bale's Batman was good for what it was. But for me, like Ben Affleck's Batman was like the definitive
Ultimate edition.
of what
Yeah.
Batman should be, because he bulked up, he tanked up for it, right? And but just the suit was so well
It was
done.
simple
Yeah.
and good.
Yeah, it was so well done, right? In that warehouse scene, that when you think of Ben Affleck's Batman, that warehouse scene was like literally the best thing that has ever been filmed with Batman.
Oh yeah.
You know, the blowing up the floor and coming through it, and the people still thinking he's down there, they're shooting, and as he's going up, like all those little bombs hit all their guns, it destroys all the guns, doesn't hurt them, right? And then he systematically destroys every single person in the room, engaging, I think at one point with 3 or 4 of them at one time. And like, that's who Batman is, right? He's taking everybody down. You know, granted, in the Ultimate Edition, I don't know if you saw, but he killed one of them in the
Yeah.
Ultimate Edition. But ultimately, like the whole thing is, it's like it was the best thing I think that has ever been filmed. And I remember taking Dexter to go see Batman versus Superman. Right, he was dressed up as Batman. We were going to see this movie, Batman versus Superman, and I don't know if you remember the very first scene that Batman is shown. The police officers enter this house in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
There's people downstairs.
It was a scary scene.
Huh?
It was a scary
It was
scene.
a super scary scene,
Yeah.
because that's what Batman is. I looked over at him because I was like, oh no, this is going to be like an intense scene. And he was like he's not going to remember this, but he was doing this. He had his hands over his face because he was scared until the moment he saw Batman. And then it relaxed, even though the cops started shooting at him or whatever, because they were scared too. But like, it was, because that's what Batman's supposed to be. He's a scary character to the villain.
Yes. Yeah.
Right. So that's why, I mean, I just think that specific portrayal of Batman, not the movies, because Batman versus Superman wasn't really that good of a movie.
The Ultimate Edition was.
The Ultimate Edition
Yeah.
was better.
I think every single one of the original DCU movies with an extended version would be better.
Yeah. And even the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League was
I mean
way
that was
better.
that was an epic.
Yeah, it was way better. Could they have taken a couple things out, like the girls singing? Yeah.
They could have taken about an hour out
No.
just because an hour of it slow mo walking around.
Yeah, I mean,
But
if they sped it up, then it would take an hour
Yeah.
away. If it would have just been normal fighting, the movie would have been an hour less. But I know that we're reaching around close to an hour. So one of the things that I wanted to do with this particular podcast, right, whether it's getting someone that agrees with me as far as Christian or whatever, the way I like to end the podcast is like word of inspiration from you to someone who's listening. Like, just it doesn't have to be like a preformed, hey, blah blah blah, like just something. And if you don't have anything, then hey man, I don't have anything. But ultimately, like somebody that's either hurting, struggling, needs encouragement, like something that is straight from the heart to someone that could could be listening right now, that's struggling with the same thing that you are.
Yeah, so I would say that there's a lot that I've struggled with in my life, from adoption to suicide to depression to loneliness to ex-wives, military, bullying. It's all there. My hope for you would be that even whenever you're feeling down, to realize that there's hope out there. God never leaves you in the darkness. He's always there. You just have to open up your eyes and find out where that light is. The Bible tells us that there's always a way of escape. God always provides a way. Some people, that way of escape's prayer. Some people, it's reading the Bible. Some people, it's walking around outside, getting out of the situation. Stop drinking so much. Stop taking the drugs. Stop watching certain things. Whatever the case may be is. Find your way out. That's what you need to do. Open up the Word. Pray to God. Ask Him to provide you a way out. And He will. He will provide it. But my inspiration for you would be that you're not alone. You're not by yourself. You're never alone. Whatever you're struggling with, somebody else has struggled with it as well, and there's somebody out there that can help you. So pick up the phone and call, and just keep on calling and texting until somebody answers. And then when that person answers, if they provide you with hope, if they provide you with answers, then hold on to them until they get you out of the water, and then start walking yourself through your walk with Christ. So,
I love it. And if you don't mind me jumping on the back part of that,
Yeah.
is one of the things that you and I agree on is what the enemy does. The enemy, people call him the devil, people Satan, all that sort of stuff, but the enemy makes you feel like you're alone.
yes.
And once you feel isolated, that's when bad stuff happens. The people that jump off bridges and all that sort of stuff think that there's no other alternative because they're isolated and feel alone. So,
Well, why do you think when wars happen, people don't say bomb the entire army? No, they say go after the leader. If you kill the leader, you kill the army. That's what the devil likes to do. He gets you by yourself so he can kill you. And if he kills you, everything that you influence dies along with you. And that's why isolation and suffering and pain is probably one of the best tools the devil has, is to get you by yourself.
yep.
So
Awesome. Well, I appreciate those words of encouragement. What I want to do is I want to grab this. This is Dear Me, I Found You, right? Everybody go and buy it. There's going to be a link in the description. I have not had a chance to read it. This is my copy that I bought.
yes,
That I bought.
he did not get it
Just
for
got
free.
here today. I bought this because I love supporting my friends and family and all that. So when they do something like this, I definitely will be reading it. But I want to thank Matt for coming here. He drove a while to come here and hang out for a little bit and be on the podcast.
Only an hour and a half,
Only an hour and a half. You know, how many times have I drove up there?
like once, or maybe
I think 1.5.
maybe
I
like
ran out of
6
gas.
times.
I ran out of
7.
gas. The Prius ran out of gas, so I pulled over on the side of the road and didn't make it up there. But yeah, get your copy of Dear Me, I Found You, book by G.M. James. I have to look because I'm used to calling you Matt. So like I'm like, what's it? Oh yeah, it's Arthur G.
I wanted to use a pen name
I
that was
know.
fancy, because if it ends up being something super big and they make a movie out of it or something, GM James sounds a lot better than Matt James. You know, sounds kind of like an old school name. So
Okay, one last question.
Yes.
If they make a movie out of it, who plays Micah?
you,
Yes. So Micah's going to be old and fat?
yes.
I love it. All right. Thank you for watching. And this has been Aaron Ask America, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.